When we start talking about using chipping fluids as one of our finishes on our models, some of the things to consider are simply what type of effect are you trying to work for? Are you looking for larger chips? Are you looking for scratches and blemishes? Something smaller, something larger? Are you trying to replicate a photograph, create a special effect? And this will help determine which of the chipping fluids might work best for you. And we have some different examples here. We have a heavy chipping fluid, so this will create larger chips and scratches on your models. When we have some acrylic effects, which are great to be shooting straight from your airbrush, very handy, convenient bottle, part of the Gen 3 series. And then we also have worn effects, and this will be used to create, say, smaller blemishes and scuffs and scratches and things like that. Another consideration when using chipping fluids is the scale of the model that you're working with. If you're working with a large model, perhaps the heavy chipping fluids would work best for you because those chips would be in scale. But as you work your way, say, to smaller and smaller scales, 1/35th to say 1/48th to say 1/72nd, well, the size of the chips need to be in scale and relative to the size of the model you're working with. So different blends will help you achieve different results and appropriate for the scale and size of the model and the effects that you're looking for as you work through the chipping fluid. Let's first begin by talking about the tools that we'll be using. Those old paintbrushes, don't throw them away because they're perfect for this task. We'll use some water and maybe a few extra items just to add some special types of scrapes and scratches. Toothpicks, tweezers, things like that will work perfectly for this. Regardless of the type of chipping fluid you decide to use, the process is the same throughout. First, we lay down our base color. Allow that to dry completely, and this could be any type of a paint, from an acrylic to a lacquer to an enamel. With the base layers dry, now we can add our chipping fluid. Recommended 2 to 3 light coats, covering all the surfaces, allowing each layer of chipping fluid to dry before adding the next. The drying time on the chipping fluids, well, that's somewhat dependent upon your environment. Anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes. However, no need to rush, no need to panic because the chipping fluids will remain workable and active for hours, maybe even up to a day. On this example, I've used the teal color as my base and I've applied the chipping fluid and then the bright green as my top layer, and I'll chip the bright green back, exposing the teal underneath to add this really wonderful finish to this Gundam figure. Now in this demonstration, I have this 1/48 scale Hetzer. And I've already painted it into a primer red color here, and eventually we'll top it off with a camouflage color of yellow. But what I want to show in the final presentation is areas of scuff and wear, especially along some of these edges here where the crew will have moved across the surface and caused some damages and small scratches and scuffs. And for that, I'm going to be using the AK worn effects. This will be a perfect complement to the scale of the model, 1/48 scale, and the rather subtle types of chipping that I hope to achieve in the final results. So let's get over to my workbench and we'll get started. As mentioned before, the basic process is exactly the same regardless of the type of chipping fluid you choose to use. The worn and scratches effects is dropped directly into my airbrush, and now I apply 2 to 3 light coats of the fluid over the entire model, allowing each layer to dry before adding the next. Once this is dried completely, again about a half an hour, then I'll be ready to add the top coat. This will be my top layer of paint that will chip through. Once again, the tools are exactly the same, old paintbrushes. Now it's time just to use the water on the paintbrush, a moist paintbrush. It doesn't need to be flooded wet, and just start scrubbing. Once we break through that top layer just a little bit, it will activate the chipping fluids underneath, and you'll start to flake off or chip off some of the top layer of paint. Go slow. Kind of want to sneak up on this. You can always keep going. It's always kind of hard to go back. As you can see, the worn and scratches effect, very fine, small chips and scratches along these leading edges, top edges, and areas of high wear. Let's take a look now at the heavy chipping fluid. Now this is probably the most aggressive of the fluids, meaning that it produces the largest chips. This is a great choice if you have large areas to work with or you want a very aggressive type of chip. Once again, straight into the airbrush cup, 2 to 3 layers of the chipping fluid overall. Allow that to dry completely. Our top coat color, once again, an acrylic color, and then we can start chipping. And as you'll see here, the chips, the flakes of paint come off rather easy and in big areas here. So it's, again, perfect for large surfaces or very aggressive types of weathering. As shown, using the chipping fluids is a very simple process, very easy to use, but the results are great for adding character and interest to your models.